Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the brutal life of a medieval archer, worse than you ever imagined. Forget everything Hollywood told you, this is the real story, and trust me, you probably wouldn't last a day. So before you get too comfortable, hit that like button if you enjoy this kind of deep dive, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe grab a snack, and let's jump in. You wake up on a damp pile of straw, and I'm not talking about the cozy medieval fantasy in kind of straw. I mean real, rat-infested, sweat-soaked, probably fungus-laced, hay stuffed in the corner of a wooden shack that technically counts as your barracks. Your joints creak before you even stand. You're 19, but your spine thinks it's 73. Why? Because yesterday, you spent 10 hours drawing a 180-pound longbow over and over. You don't just use this weapon, it mutates your entire body. Your right arm, jacked. Your left arm, sad and ignored. Your back, twisted like a pretzel made by an angry blacksmith. You're not symmetrical anymore. Congratulations, you're a weapon but not a pretty one. And your reward for surviving yesterday's hell training, more of the same. Plus, some boiled oats. Cold, with a little extra flavor, courtesy of whatever the rats didn't finish. Still think being an archer is romantic. You head outside. It's foggy. The kind of fog that feels like it's judging you. Your commander yells to the range. You want to say, "Can I at least stretch?" But you know better. Backtalk gets you a bruised ego and probably a bruised face. So you line up, draw, breathe, release, repeat, repeat, repeat until your fingers blister, your forearm screams, and your shoulder feels like it's been slowly roasted over a tavern fire. Now, let's pause here. Ever gone to the gym and thought, wow, that arm day really got me? Try pulling a longbow 400 times in one session. This is arm day forever. Oh, and fun fact, you don't get gloves. Those raw fingertips, they're your badge of honor. And also the reason you can't even hold a spoon without wincing. You'd think after hours of training, you'd get a break. Maybe a tankard of ale, a flirtatious barmaid, a lute player serenading your aching soul. Nope, you get guard duty, and not the stand around and look cool with a hood kind. The stand outside in the cold rain, on a muddy wall, while your nose freezes and your boots leak and your bowstring starts unraveling kind. Also, hygiene. You smell like wet wool and regret. There's no deodorant, no showers, no privacy. Your most prized possession. Probably your one intact toenail, or your last uncracked bowl, or the fact that you haven't died of dysentery yet. You thought the worst part of this life would be the enemy. Arrows flying past your head, the chaos of the battlefield, the constant threat of dying in mud. No, your worst enemy is time, because you train and you suffer and you wait. ... and wait. And then one day, after months of nothing, the horn sounds. You grab your bow, you run to your post, and that's when you see it. A shadow on the horizon, a banner in the wind, and suddenly your training isn't theoretical anymore. But what happens next? What happens when the arrows actually fly? When your fingers are shaking, your breath is short, and your target is not a straw dummy, but a man just like you. Well, let's just say not every archer gets to tell that story. Some don't even get a chance to knock their first arrow. And then there's what happens after the battle. But what happens next? What happens when the arrows actually fly? When your fingers are shaking, your breath is short, and your target is not a straw dummy, but a man just like you. Well, let's just say not every archer gets to tell that story. Some don't even get a chance to knock their first arrow. And then there's what happens after the battle. So you made it. You lived through the skirmishes, dodged the plague somehow, survived the arrows, and didn't get trampled by a horse or stabbed in the face. Congrats. You're now useless. You can't shoot anymore. Your draw-arm is ruined, permanently warped from years of repetitive strain. Doctors, oh, you mean the guy with the leeches and a rusty saw? Yeah, he says you've got archer's rot. Super scientific. Pensions. Ha. You're lucky if you're allowed to beg outside the castle gates without being chased off with a stick. Some old archers end up as watchmen, others as drunk storytellers. The lucky ones, they find a cottage and live out their days hunched, arthritic, and ignored. Your once impressive calloused fingers, now just crooked reminders of a life spent pulling a string that never gave back. And worst of all, that bow, the thing you trained for, lived for, killed for, it's hung up on a nail, a museum piece in your own hovel. Just a piece of wood, sinew, and ghosts. Now and then, you hear the newer recruits talk. They romanticize it, the glory, the honor, the thrill of the arrow's release. They dream of standing in battle, drawing with perfect form, piercing the enemy from afar. You want to laugh or cry, but instead you stay quiet, staring at your crooked hands and your worn boots, because deep down you know something they don't. The arrow doesn't care who it kills, and neither does history. But still, on cold nights, you sometimes close your eyes and feel it again. The tension of the bowstring, the silence before the whistle. That moment when you became something more than just a man holding a stick, and for a heartbeat, you remember why you did it. But memory fades, and soon something else begins. Because, as brutal as the life of a medieval archer was, what happens when the war never ends? Just changes shape. What if your greatest battle isn't behind you, but buried deep in the wounds you carried home? And what if, centuries later, those echoes still linger in ways we've never noticed? More on that next time. The years pass. The battles blur into foggy memories, faces without names, places without markers. You forget the blood. You remember the silence after, the eerie stillness of a field once filled with chaos. People think of you as just another old soldier, a relic, a shadow from a violent age. But what they'll never see, what they'll never ask, is what it cost you to pull that bow every day. Not just the muscle, not just the bone, the soul. Because when you train to become a weapon, you slowly stop being a person. And yet, you were never just a killer. You were a shield, a protector, a thread in the vast, messy tapestry of survival. You didn't wear a crown, you didn't sit on a throne, but kingdoms stood because men like you stood first. Still, here's the final irony. You lived a brutal life so others could live easy ones, and now they tell stories of the king, the knight, the noble, but not you, not the archer. You disappear into the footnotes of history. But if you listen closely, in the hush before dawn, in the whistle of wind through trees, you might still hear it. The bowstring pulling back, the breath before the release, the echo of a life that mattered. And just when you think the story's over, a young recruit steps up, a new war brews on the horizon, and the sound of the string begins again.